Hey guys, what is up? My name is Griefdrums, and this is how to get more kills in Rainbow Six Siege. Okay, so there's a few different things that you need to think about when you're playing this game. Obviously, it is not Call of Duty, so you can't play it like that. You do need to think about the game slightly differently, and you need to play it slightly differently. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start off, I'm going to run through a few tips and tricks that I like to use, and a bit of general advice that have really helped me improve my game. Hopefully it'll do the same for you, and hopefully you'll be able to get decent score stats and a better kill-death ratio. So, okay, the first thing we're going to start with is your setup and the operators that you choose. Now, this clearly plays a massive factor. If you're running around with a shotgun, for example, you're not going to be any good at long-range engagements, and as such your playstyle is going to have to change to short range to medium. Shotguns are much more suited for people that aren't roaming, and instead hunkering down inside the room. Now don't get me wrong, this doesn't rule out roaming completely, but it just works better if you're defending in the room. You don't have to stay in the objective room, of course, you can push slightly further out, but they're more effective if you're staying still, guarding a single room. The setup I personally like to go with is an SMG or an assault rifle, whether I'm defending or attacking. And you've got a couple of options in the form of the sights. A holographic sight and ACOG sight are my favourites by a country mile. The reticule on the holographic sight is so pinpoint that you can be ridiculously accurate with it. I'll be the first to admit that it is slightly bulky around the outside of the sight. As with the ACOG, slightly bulky, does block a lot of the screen, but this is something that you get used to after a little while, and it doesn't become too much of a problem. Obviously the ACOG is fantastic for long range engagements. It can be difficult to get used to at first due to the amount of recoil. Your sight jumps all over the show if you're on fully automatic, so it is best used with the marksman rifles, or alternatively you can put your rifle onto single shot or burst fire. It does make it a hell of a lot easier to control it. Okay, so one of the biggest tips that I'm going to give to people here is if the enemy have any idea of where you are, they have the advantage. Now this does seem like a common sense thing to say, but you will be amazed at how many people go running through a door in which they've just been shooting at someone through. One of the biggest things that I will say to people is if it's going wrong and they know where you are, break off contact. These maps are laid out in such a way that you can come at the enemy from so many different angles. You don't have to go through the doors, you don't have to come from where they're expecting you. Try and mix it up. Whether that be shooting them from below, above, behind them, next to them, just be as creative as you possibly can. You really want to keep these guys guessing and keep them on their toes. As far as attacking goes, attack aggressively. This doesn't mean be stupid and gung-ho, it just means attempt to keep pushing forward, attempt to open up the room in several different places, either at the same time or at multiple times. As long as the room is open, the defenders are going to be absolutely bricking it, not knowing where the hell you're going to be coming from. The opposite applies for defenders. Defend patiently. Yes, roamers should be fairly aggressive, but at the same time the attackers have a limited amount of time to get to the objective. So if you can cause them to take their time, you're going to win. It's simple maths. The biggest mistake I see people making is they attack through doorways. Now this isn't always an option to be ruled out. Sometimes it's the only way, certainly if a lot of your team are dead and there's no other way that you can go. But a lot of people get funneled into these doorways. They see that it's wooden and they think, right, I'll just smash that. There's no need. This game comes with destructive environments. The entire map is destructive, so why not use that to your advantage? With thermite on your team, reinforcements don't really matter too much, so the enemy aren't expecting to see you coming through that wall next to them. Even if you just blow it as a distraction, that is a hell of a lot better because the enemy have to keep an eye on it from now on. The destructive environment can obviously work to the defender's advantage as well in the form of murder holes. There's a couple of different ways you can do murder holes. You can either shoot the wall out with a shotgun, you can nitro it, but obviously that's too big. I've seen people do like linear murder holes, so it's all the way across the wall in one like horizontal line. This personally for me, I never ever see this working. Obviously it must work for people out there, otherwise people wouldn't continue to do it, but you can see where it's darker, so you can see where the defender is standing. What I like to do is just punch the wall once. That way the daylight comes through, and as soon as that daylight is obscured, you know someone's on the other side and can start shooting. Rather than trying to get a good old look through the wall and exposing the front of your rifle and potentially even your head, why not just create a couple of little holes and just watch from the side? A big mistake I see people making is they don't implement something called slicing the pie. Now, this isn't a sexual term before anyone starts. The idea of slicing the pie is a military tactic that's used to clear rooms and to clear doors and entry points. And the way it works is that as you move around the outside of the wall, you are slowly exposing more and more of the room without exposing yourself to other enemy players. By utilising this tactic, you're only showing yourself to one enemy player at a time. At least that's the theory. The good thing about this tactic is you are constantly in cover. If things don't start going your way, you see someone and they get the upper hand on you for whatever reason, you can easily move back into cover. You can then break contact if you want to and go round and flank them, come from a different angle and slice the pie again. This tactic should be used on doorways, but can be used on absolutely any wall. In Rainbow Six Siege, you need to utilise peeking. Peeking is massive. It allows you to look into a room without exposing too much of your body. Using this peeking, you can play the angles to your advantage. Rather than standing directly in front of a window or a door, you can stand off to the side and utilise the angles. This is slicing the pie, but in a much slower way. Obviously the same applies to defenders with murder holes. Don't sit directly in front of it unless it's dark behind you. If it is dark, you will be camouflaged, but you're obviously going to be fairly exposed. If you sit off at an angle, you can see the enemy as they come past. Another big mistake I see people making is aiming for people's feet for some reason. As soon as they're lying down under a table or something like that, as an attacker comes into the room, they start shooting at their shins and their feet. Obviously in real life this is going to bring you down like a sack of potatoes. In this game it doesn't. It takes a hell of a lot of shots to bring someone down by shooting them in the legs, so instead aim for the head. Credit 9 times out of 10, if you're lying down you're going to be looking under doors and you're actually going to be looking for people's feet, but just don't start shooting them. Take that second to aim up, aim for the head, and you will end them quicker than you can imagine. When clearing rooms, clear in pairs at least. You need to do this to clear rooms effectively. You need to cover each other. If a door opens out left and right and you're on your own, you can only look one way, and Sod's Law says the enemy will be the other way. One top tip, whether you're attacking or defending, is to utilise your drones or cameras. If you watch any pro gamers, they will always do this. Why go into a room when you can send a drone in first to spot where the enemy are? This way, when you go into a room, you know exactly what you're facing. If there's 3 guys in there, you're probably not going to go in on your own. And if you do have to, you at least know whereabouts they're standing. When it comes to tagging enemies, there is a time and a place to do this, but on the whole, try not to. Instead, use good callouts to your team. When you do tag enemies, it'll just prompt them to either look for the drone or the camera. If you are tagging enemies, a dark red tag means it's fairly fresh and the enemy is more likely than not to still be there. If it's faded, it means it's not very recent and they've probably moved away or even died. Hopefully by implementing these tips you will get a higher kill death ratio, but I'd love to hear more of your top tips, so let me know in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and until next time guys, I've been Griefdrums.